so much for having me here. I have to say, I'm really relieved that a lot of you haven't been to one of these because it's my first time and I did not know what they expected from me. And as David said, I just jumped off of a plane from Barcelona. So forgive me if I just shout a Spanish word now and then, you know, just gracias. So I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy. Oh, this screen looks kind of funny. There. So happy to be talking about serendipity. It's been a word that I've been throwing around for the last 6 months inside of my work. And it's funny because when you throw these words around, the minute somebody asks you, would you talk about it, I all of a sudden turn into an ESL person. I'm like, I don't know what it means. And it's just like, so I was in Spain asking my friends in Spanish and my American friends, what is serendipity to you? What are all the different aspects of serendipity, and how do we encounter it and apply it into our creative processes? And so that was really exciting. And then I came home and I decided to look up the good old Merriam-Webster dictionary, and they say that serendipity is the faculty or phenomenon of finding valuable or agreeable things not sought for. So in my words, it's having something happen that you're really happy about that you weren't even expecting. Does everyone think that's what it is? Yeah. Like, okay. And has everyone experienced serendipity? Okay, that was another real curiosity, because how conscious are we in experiencing serendipity? So as David told you, I just want to give you a little bit more of a background of what I do. I'm an independent fashion designer here in Columbus, and we have a lot of the great corporations, but I'm one of the few independent ones which we're starting to build our own community here. And I go to different sheep farms and I gather the wool and the alpaca fibers, and I actually incorporate it into my work. I make the textiles. I dye all naturally, so any color you see in any of my pieces are all naturally dyed. Very sustainable, eco-conscious, and ethically designed. So that's sort of my center, and that's, it's my world. I work from that world when I try to solve problems and answer the big questions that we have in our day. So serendipity. I notice that when I think about all the serendipitous moments, that there seems to be a pattern. A lot of times I think of serendipity as, oh, it just happens on its own. Things happen, they fall together, the universe comes together, and then there's serendipity. But as I was looking at different times in my creative processes, different stages, I realized that I actually see a pattern in serendipity. I think that with our actions and certain factors, we actually can invite serendipity into our world, into our creative processes. So things like purpose, belief, drive, passion, meaning. I think all of these, when we start from that point and work our way, not necessarily to even an end result, we just start from that point of what do I believe in? What drives me? What's my passion? And what do I do with that? What is this moment of a creative thought that I have, and what do I do with it? And I see that the minute I start to do something with that, I continue on, and even though I don't see the end, there's always serendipity at the end, which is amazing. Have you guys experienced that too? Like you start, okay, so you're kind of moving along. And so we may not have the ability to create serendipity, but we certainly have the ability to increase the chance of it happening. And so I kind of want to share a moment. It just happened it was about a year ago. My biggest moment of realization of serendipity when it happened in my work. So I was over at a friend's house, and as I told you, I'm very sustainable, so people make fun of me because I'll put everything in my purse and then get home and recycle because I'm so worried that could, harm our environment. So I was over at a friend's house and I went to go throw something away, and I opened the rubbish bin, and in there were a pair of jeans. And it was shocking to me. It was just like, oh my God, what is in here? And so I pulled these jeans out, and I was like, what are these doing in your rubbish bin? And my friend was like, well, they're torn up, they have paint on them, I can't wear them, and I can't give them the goodwill. They're not gonna take them. And she was like, what am I supposed to do with them? And you know, of course, there's the dramatic designer me, and I was like, you give them to me! You give all of that to me! And so she was like, okay, we'll take them, you know. And in my mind, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with these things. Like, I mean, yeah, of course Goodwill won't take them. Like, I couldn't put them on my dog. It was so, they were just torn up. So I was just like, you know, though, that means that everyone here must wear jeans. I mean, does anyone here not have a pair of jeans? So I thought of that. Every single person must have at least one pair of jeans. We wear them, we go through them, and I know a lot of us have those pairs of jeans that we love so much, we can't wear anymore, and we don't even want to get rid of them because they mean something to us. There's that energy, right? There's an energy that goes into the clothing that we wear, our favorite pieces. We have a connection. And it's weird. It's like this comfort. It's not weird. It's wonderful. It's this level of comfort that it gives us. So we hold on to them. And we don't want to get rid of them unless something special happens to them because we treated them so specially when we had them. So I did a call out. I thought, oh my God, all these pairs of jeans are homeless out there, and you know, or maybe unwanted or you know, buried somewhere because a lot of the fashion industry creates waste. So I kind of want to show you this before I move on into the story. But in case some of you aren't familiar, which most people aren't familiar with how much waste the fashion industry creates, here are a couple of statistics. These are from 2016. So more than 15 million tons of used textile waste is generated each year. Okay, that's only for a year, only in the United States. And the amount has doubled in the last 20 years only in the United States. This was just last year. An average American, that's us, if we think of ourselves as an average American, we throw away approximately 80 pounds of used clothing per person. And I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, it adds up, right? How many people are in this room? And that's just clothing. That's not even talking about rags, rugs, blankets, or any other textiles that we throw away. On average, nationally, again, it costs cities $45 per ton to dispose of old clothing. So not only are we creating waste, but we're affecting our economy, and we don't really think about that aspect of what happens there. And synthetic clothing may take hundreds of years to decompose. Synthetic clothing, some with the smart fibers now, they won't decompose. I mean, it might take 1,000 years, and we don't know. We haven't seen that process yet, which is one of the reasons why I make sustainable pieces. You can throw this dress into the ground when it's reached its full life cycle, and it's completely biodegradable and completely natural. Thank you. Thank you. It's important to me. So here are these jeans, right? And so I did a call out. I did one call out on Facebook. And I said, does anybody have jeans that they don't wear anymore, that you want something special to happen to, which I didn't even know what the special was at the time. Just was like, just give them to me, I'll love them. And I got to my studio the next day, and I had jeans in front of my steps. I couldn't even get into my doorway. People would text me and say, I'm gonna bring by some jeans. You know, they'll drive by and just throw them at me almost, and just like 5, 6 jeans. I had one woman come in and bring me jeans, and she said, my husband would not get rid of these, and I've been dying to get rid of these. And she said, but he wouldn't just throw them away, and we couldn't give them the goodwill. He wanted something special to happen to them. And I made her a promise. I promise you that something special will happen. I don't know what that is. But something special will. So here I was driven, I was concerned, this deep concern about our environment, about these jeans, and you know, and so I just started to make things. I started to experiment. I started to take the jeans apart. There's some Levi's. So I just, by hand, I just started cutting into them, taking them apart, and promising that I would use every single aspect of those jeans and not create any waste. So it's a zero waste project for me. And then I thought, well, I work with these local wool, farms, these local fiber farms. I know every sheep by name, and I happened to have had a new sheep named Snow White at that time, and I really wanted to use her wool for something. So I said, I'll take Snow White and I'll spin her wool with these fibers and see what happens. So I spun the fibers with the jeans, and you can see it better here. This is the yarn that I made. So I basically took jeans that were unwanted and unusable, took their fibers, recreated yarn, and then I thought, okay, well, what do I do with it now? I've got this really cool yarn. I could knit with it, I could weave it. And it just sort of got to that stage where I was like, oh my God, I'm so driven, but I'm not making any money off of this. What am I doing? This is like, what am I doing? And this is where serendipity came. So 6 months later, I got a call, and I was invited to do a talk at the International Federation of Library Congress, which we had 5,000 people come to Columbus. It was a big deal because they hadn't had it in the US for years and years and years, and we won the bid. And they came from 320 countries, and they asked me to do a presentation on jeans. I had never worked with jeans before. Like, I worked with wool, and I was a tailor. I worked with silk, natural dyeing, but I never had worked with jeans. And the cherry on top was they wanted me to talk about Levi's and how jeans were born here in the United States in San Francisco. I grew up in San Francisco, and I would ride my little bike. I was about 5 years old, and I'd ride my little bike in front of the Levi Strauss building in the Mission District where I grew up in San Francisco. So just this connection. And of course, I was like, yes, of course. Like, I'm ready. I've got it. I've got the stuff. And, it was one of those things where it was serendipitous, but it was over this long period of time. It wasn't, it ended up being serendipity at that moment, but it felt like I was inviting serendipity to happen through that drive. And so what I did is I took the fabric and I felted it. I went further and I started to try and felt it onto base fabrics. I do a lot of felting in my work. And then I also took the fibers and I did this thing called stream of consciousness embroidery, which is really hard. If anybody embroiders, you should try it. It's really hard to let go of control. And then I wove it, and I created new fabric. And I presented it as, we know Levi's blue jeans, we all know what blue jeans are, but what will blue jeans become in the future? 100 years from now, what are blue jeans going to look like? And all of this waste that we have now, how can we actually use that to create the blue jeans? So I ended up creating these pieces that were very Asian infused because it also represented the change of demographic in the city of San Francisco. When I grew up, my area was an old Italian section, and now there are a lot of Asians there. And so that sort of, here's another one where it was kind of a kilt, and you can see the felting here with the denim waist as well. And then one more. This is the stream of consciousness, linear embroidery. So I think that was sort of the awakening for me in terms of questioning what serendipity was, and not just questioning it, but kind of trying to look at it from different perspectives. And it really opened up this idea of finding a place in our lives, inside of our creativity, inside of our daily lives, where we're consciously putting effort, because you can't just wish that you are inviting serendipity, right? There has to be discipline. Discipline has to be infused in that, and hard work, of course, and the freedom to create, the freedom to experiment, and all of those factors. Oh, I didn't see you. All of those factors will actually, I believe, turn into an invitation to serendipity. And I believe that the more serendipitous moments we have, I think it sparks us into another phase. So when I do interviews, like I did for the New York Times, a lot of times they'll ask me the question at the end. They see my studio, they see my work, they're, you know, they're into it. It's different, it's unique, and then they say, "So what next?" And I always get just like, "Oh my God, I don't know what next." You know, I'm still doing this. You know, and but I think now that, and I thank you, David. I thank you, Molly and Julie, for inviting me, because I think now my viewpoint is really different in answering that question. I think what's next is just the idea of inviting serendipity into my creative process, my work. My work is, and my life, they're ambiguous. They're so blended. I can't call one life and one work. They're the same. And what comes next is next. So instead of worrying about, well, okay, planning is great. Let's get to this next project. Let's plan this project. That's perfect. That's what we should be doing. But also, I think there's just so much beauty and spontaneity and really a different type of creativity that lies in allowing what comes next to be next. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You must have questions. Please.
How long did it take you to create for that show?
Oh my gosh. It was a lot of all-nighters because they didn't give me a lot of time. So I think it could have been a solid 2 months of spinning. I hand spun all that, which I had lost my mind because I could have used a spinning wheel, but I used a drop spindle because the drop spindle gives me irregular yarns, the irregular tension. So that's why you could see all the different, the different blobs and stuff. So yeah, I think it probably 3 months straight. Yes? Oh, sorry, Dave.
What is felting?
Thank you for asking. You do something for so long, you think everybody knows what it is. But so felting is taking fiber, mainly wool fiber, because wool fiber is the only natural fiber that has scales like our hair, and taking that fiber and placing them strategically atop fabric. I do something called nuno felting, which is not very common in the United States for some reason. But I put those atop a base fabric like a silk. And I place them strategically, and then you wet them and irritate them. And when you wet them, you open up those scales and make them intertangle, and then they're pretty much, I'm sure I've done this several times, and I should know better, but you take a wool sweater or something and you accidentally wash it and dry it, and then it comes out this big, where you're essentially felting it because you're allowing the scales to open up and entangle and shrink into each other. So.
Mike, please.
How did you get your start as an independent fashion designer?
Oh, well, I think I was just so frightened by working for a corporation. I know, and it's so silly to be here now. I moved here 4 years ago from New York City, and it's so crazy to be in a place that has wonderful corporations, like amazing corporations. But I really wanted to try and preserve my creative freedom. And so I thought, I'll just try, okay, if it doesn't work, then I can go work for somebody. But let me just try, because I'm constantly trying new things. I'm constantly, as you can see, I get these ideas and I can't stop. I want to experiment. And I've been very fortunate to just be able to keep doing it independently full time. So I'll let you, okay. Lucas?
Do you ever hit a creative block where you're stuck, and then do you do anything to find new sources of inspiration?
Yes, I hit those, I wouldn't say often, but I have quite a few creative blocks. And what I find, which is really wonderful about this space, and that makes me so I just love the energy here, is I collaborate. When I feel like I have a block, the last time I had a block, I was depressed coming home. You know, I was coming from San Francisco, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta go back to Columbus, and you know, what am I gonna do? Is we're gonna work out there, and with my husband is here, and so I said, you know what? If I just knew what Columbus sounded like, it would make me feel at home. But I don't know. I can close my eyes, and I know what San Francisco sounds like. I can close my eyes and New York City, but Columbus, I didn't understand what it sounded like. So I, of course, went to everybody, and I was like, do you know what Columbus sounds like? What does it sound like to you? You know, and everybody was like, okay, crazy woman. And then I ran into a musician, and she was a friend of mine who, there were great supporters here. It was her husband. And I said, oh my gosh, his name is Benji. He's with Reptile Fiction. And I said, Benji, do you know what Columbus sounds like? You're a musician. You're here in Columbus. You, out of all people, must know what Columbus sounds like. And he was like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. No, I don't. And he was like, let's go and explore. So we went around, and he taped the different neighborhoods of Columbus, and we listened to them together. And then he created 8 songs, and he infused them into his songs. And then I created 8 couture pieces, and I wish I have a picture on my iPad I can show you. And I created 8 couture pieces based on those songs, and we burned the music sound waves down the front. It was really fun. I'll definitely show you a picture of that. But
Will you send that to me so we can send it out?
yes, definitely. And so that cured me. I was just like, oh my God, I got it. Obsessed with this new creative process.
One of the mythology genes for me are the rivets and functional industrial components. How did you handle that metal and the waste of the metal?
Yes. Yes, I was concerned about that, and the zippers, and even the stitching. I reused everything about them. So I took the metal and I created little weights with them, because many times in my couture pieces I use weights to manipulate the way things hang. And yeah, you know, I mean, when you need, necessity is the mother of all invention. Is that the phrase? So yeah, and then I also took some and I reused them. So some parts in that picture where there's a girl with the pleat, she had like a cummerbund, and one of them was the button with the buttonhole. So I strategically cut it to reuse that aspect. Thank you. Yes.
So Celeste, one of the things I'm really curious about, because we've talked about this before, is this notion of serendipity and then scale and time. And I know there's a lot of designers who aren't as fortunate as you, where they can work full time in this capacity. They may have to work for a corporation in which there's a lot of deadline and there's a lot of, the production's good. Is serendipity possible there, or is that why they have to have their practice on the side too? Where does serendipity then fall off?
Oh my God, Cindy, you always ask the best questions.
I'm not sure how to
most
answer.
compelling question. Yeah, I'm not a fast fashion person. I believe that anything fast loses something. Fast things are great, but you just can't get some things fast. Fast fashion, fast food, fast data. So I don't know the answer to that. I don't think you have time. I don't think you have time to let serendipity happen. But I don't know. I'll think about that more, because that's an interesting question. But yeah, my friends that are in the corporations, their main complaint is that nothing magically happens. That everything, happens very categorically, and then it either works or it completely fails. And, and I have to say, with everything I do, I never have a complete failure, because it's allowed time to process itself almost, So, yeah, thank you, though. It's a good question. Back there?
Do you give advice to people who take one shot more and travel mentally, consciously, and avoid fast fashion?
Yes, thank you for asking that. I love when people ask me that. I think sometimes we think to be eco-conscious because we throw these words around a lot and there's not a lot of meaning. We buy local, you know, that's another thing. I would always throw words, I would always say, buy local, buy local, buy local, you know. And then last year, it was Christmas time, and I had to go buy a bunch of wool from a local farmer, and I bought a lot of wool because I was running these workshops. And I gave her the check, and she instantly started to cry, and she said, now I can buy my kids Christmas presents. And that was just like, oh my God, that's what buying local is. So that is like this conscientious way of living. And it's a way of living. It's not just a fad. You know, you can't, you know, throw your jeans away and then be like, oh yeah, I you know, buy local. I mean, it has to be all-encompassing. So I think just being really conscious about what it is that you're buying. And nowadays, you can get information on everything you're buying. You know, a lot of the natural fibers are great for the environment, and knowing that they're made in a place that is regulated and you know, fair trade, a lot of that stuff. So, and I think just day to day with yourself, you know, what are we putting on us? What are we putting in us? You know, down from the shampoo to the breakfast you eat to the shoes you wear. So thank you for asking that. It's important to me. So, yes?
You talked about early in your career being afraid of going into a corporation or whatever. My question is, and it's kind of ambiguous, but how did you survive? If you
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. No, I mean, I think I survived through perseverance, which is another factor, I think, that leads to serendipity. I think a lot of serendipitous moments, I would be doing, you know, I would talk to somebody and then all of a sudden it would be like, oh, you know him and you can, and then all of a sudden this person would want to order things for their store. You know, and I thought I was just going to go get olives at the supermarket, you know. So there are those moments. But I think it is perseverance, knowing and loving your work. People can see that and they can feel it. I am sort of this, you know, clothing hippie, I think, but I believe that clothing has energy. It's from the fibers that we use to make them, to the people making them, to the person that wears them. There's always that special piece you put on, again, like those jeans, where you feel like, oh, I love this hat. It makes me feel safe, or it makes me feel happy. So I think knowing my work and having faith in my work and just persevering. There have been times where I'd, you know, eat a donut for lunch, which were very good. But yeah, so I think it's, you know, when you do something long enough that you love, the money comes.
What's the name of your shop? Where's it located?
It's Malvar-Stewart, and I have a studio in German Village. It's on Livingston. You might have seen it. It's called Hangar 391 on Livingston. It's not open. It doesn't have daily times, but it's people can pop in by appointment only. We have annual sales. I do pop-up shops, and I'm looking to sell to stores this fall here in the area. A lot of my stores are outside of Ohio. So, yeah, and then online. And I love to have conversations with people. I have someone in California who is ordering a dress, and, you know, we're just talking about her personality right now, not even the dress yet. So, stuff like that. Yeah. Yes?
What's your studio set up like? Do you have other people who come and help you stitch or, you know, design or?
Yeah, I don't have anyone helping me design yet because it is such an odd way of designing. It's almost backwards because I'm creating the textiles as well. So I haven't found anyone there, but I have wonderful interns that come from University of Cincinnati, their DAP program. I have one now that's from Kent State, CCAD, of course. And then I have a couple of extra people that come in and just do the scrubbing, which is, there's so much, you know, of that kind of work I try to give them the best lunch I can because I feel so bad that that's all they do. But yeah, I have a few people that help me. And my husband is a mathematician. He's also an adjunct professor at OSU. And he helps me with all my formulas because shrinkage on my pieces is very difficult because they're all amorphic shapes and stuff. So yeah, I'm very fortunate to have him. So, and he just needs a glass of wine and he's happy. So any other? Yes?
So obviously you work in your studio a lot of times, and you say you sit in Journal Village. Do you feel like sometimes serendipity is also about how you find inspiration in different ways? And do you go to different places when you are looking for ideas? I know it seems like you travel quite a bit in different parts of the world, which obviously helps, right? With
Yes.
But in town in Columbus, do you have a place that you go to if you want to get some inspiration, or is there anywhere you go you find a lot of energy and a lot of kind of connection that you can make?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question too because I didn't know this until we moved here because I grew up in San Francisco. I lived in New York City. I went to school in London, England, and all these big cities that were very dynamic. And then we were coming to Ohio, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do in Ohio? And I found out that I go into myself is where I go, and I love my studio because it's just standalone building. It's very small, but I do all the work there, and I take things from outside and I bring them there they stay around me, even if I find like a nest or a dead bug or something, and I bring it. And I realize that the pieces I'm creating in Columbus are, to me, even more outside of the box than I was doing in New York and London and all these other bigger cities. And I think it's because I'm actually able to go inside of myself a little bit more than in these really big, noisy places where it's just there's always noise. And you think that inspiration comes only from out here, and you're like looking for it, and I'd go to the museums, and which was inspiring too. I'm not going to say it wasn't, but I've found a very different way of finding inspiration here in Columbus, and it's a very quiet way. It's almost meditative, and I'm sure that what I'm exposed to, I'm sure of course is affecting me, like the genes, But I think the birth of ideas, I think, are so much of a deeper thing here in this city, and I love this city for it.